The click of the heavy platinum lighter was obscenely loud in the damp silence of the alley. "You are a surprisingly difficult man to find, Patch." The voice was slick, oiled, and edged with a smugness that scraped the raw nerve of the man huddled against the dumpster. The man, Patch, didn't look up. He was a meticulous assemblage of filth and despair, from the matted, synthetic-looking beard glued to his cheeks to the trench coat stiff with grime. He pulled a tattered army green blanket tighter, the wool smelling of mold and wet pavement. "Leave me be," he rasped, the voice a gravelly imitation of a man broken by the streets. The newcomer, a man in his late 30s smelling of expensive cologne, Tom Ford's Oud wood, if Patch's memory served him, and $1,000 leather shoes, crouched elegantly. "We know who you are, Mr. Thorne. This little vacation is over. Mr. Vance sends his warmest regards." A polished Italian wingtip shoe kicked the beggar's dented paper cup, sending a pathetic collection of quarters and dimes skittering across the stained concrete. The sound was a tiny, metallic shriek. Just then, a small, clear voice piped up from the alley's entrance, cutting through the tension like a sunbeam through a thundercloud. "Hey, you leave him alone!" A 7-year-old girl with neat, honey-blonde hair stood at the junction of the alley and the bustling afternoon street. She was small for her age, wearing a pink coat that was slightly too short in the sleeves, and she clutched a battered metal lunchbox adorned with a faded unicorn. The slick man chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Well, what have we here? A little sparrow. Get lost, kid. The grown-ups are talking." The girl's lip trembled, a flash of pink in her pale, serious face, but she planted her small, scuffed sneakers firmly on the ground. "You're a bully," she declared, her voice rising. "It's not nice to kick people's things." The man's amusement evaporated, replaced by a flash of annoyance. He advanced on her, his smile becoming a sneer. "You need to learn some respect for your betters, you little rat." Before he could take another step, the beggar, Patch, was on his feet. The movement was not the arthritic lurch of a street derelict. It was a coiled, sudden unspringing, a predator's reflex. His speed was shocking, utterly defying his wretched appearance. His hand, covered by a torn, fingerless glove, clamped down on the slick man's wrist. The man let out a sharp, surprised yelp. "Don't touch her." The voice was not Patch's. It was low, resonant, and vibrating with an absolute, ice-cold authority. It was the voice of Marcus Thorne, a voice that had leveled boards of directors and sent stock prices plummeting with a single syllable. The slick man's eyes widened, recognizing the sound, seeing the piercing, intelligent blue eyes burning from beneath the grime and fake beard. He tried to pull his wrist free, but the grip was like a steel trap. "Mr. Thorne, I was just—" "You were just leaving, Mr. Harrison," Marcus said, his voice dropping even lower. "You will go back to Julian Vance. You will tell him this field audit is not yet complete. You will tell him that if he or any of his other lapdogs ever come near this park, or this girl, again, I will personally dismantle his life, starting with his offshore accounts in the Caymans and ending with his mistress's apartment, which I'm sure his wife would be fascinated to learn is paid for by a shell corp funneled from the R&D budget." He shoved the man's wrist back. "Am I clear?" Harrison, pale and sweating despite the chill, scrambled backward, straightening his suit. He shot a venomous, frightened look at the girl, who was watching with wide, unblinking eyes. He then turned and fled the alley, disappearing into the anonymous afternoon crowd. Silence descended again, thicker this time, broken only by the distant wail of a siren and the scolding of a nearby jay. The little girl did not run. She took a careful, measured step forward. "You're not Patch," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus Thorne let out a long, slow breath, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him feeling the cold for the first time that day. He sagged back against the brick wall, his meticulously constructed persona shattered by a 7-year-old. He ran a gloved hand over his face, the rough wool catching on the spirit-gummed edge of his beard. "No," he said, his voice returning to the patch gravel. "No, I'm not." The girl tilted her head. "You swore. My mom says only people who are very angry or have very small vocabularies swear. You don't sound like you have a small vocabulary. You sound like my principal." She took another step, then knelt, her knees hitting the dirty concrete. She began, with painstaking care, to pick up the scattered coins. "This is yours," she said, dropping a quarter and 3 dimes into his cup. "And this." She found another nickel by a grate. Marcus watched her, this tiny, brave creature, and felt a profound, unfamiliar emotion roiling in his chest. It was a painful, aching thing. It was shame. "Thank you," he said, and this time, the voice was his own. She looked up, satisfied. "My name is Liliana, but everyone calls me Lily. My mom says it's because I'm resilient, which is a big word for bouncy." She held out the cup. He took it. Their fingers brushed. Hers were warm. "I have to go," she said, suddenly remembering herself. "My mom gets off her shift at 4:30, and I have to be at the corner to walk her home." She stood and dusted off her pink coat. "Are you going to be here tomorrow, Mr. B-" "Not Patch. Just Patch is fine," he said tiredly. "I'll be here." "Good." She gave him a small, formal nod, as if concluding a business deal. "You shouldn't let bullies push you around. You're bigger than him." And with that, she turned, her scuffed shoes slapping the pavement, and ran out of the alley, her unicorn lunchbox glinting in the sliver of sunlight. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Dynamics, leaned his head against the cold, unfeeling bricks of the alley wall and, for the first time in 20 years, had absolutely no idea what to do next. His vacation, as Harrison had called it, had been born of equal parts desperation and sheer, unadulterated boredom. Marcus Thorne was a man who had won the game. He'd inherited a robust manufacturing company from his stern, joyless father, and through a series of ruthless, brilliant tech acquisitions, had transformed it into a global behemoth. Thorne Dynamics wasn't just a company. It was an ecosystem. It ran the servers that hosted your data, the satellites that delivered it, the AI that analyzed it, and the factories that built the drones that would one day deliver your groceries. He had a penthouse in Ethelberg, a villa in Como, a jet that could circle the globe without refueling, and an ex-wife who communicated exclusively through lawyers. He also had a daughter, Annabelle, a 17-year-old he saw only on court-ordered holidays, who viewed him with a polite, glacial indifference that was far more painful than hatred. He was 45 years old and utterly, profoundly empty. The crisis had come in the form of Julian Vance. Julian was his second in command, a man Marcus had groomed, a man he'd thought of as a younger, hungrier version of himself. But Julian's hunger had become avarice. Julian saw Marcus's growing apathy, his long, listless afternoons staring out his penthouse window, and had mistaken it for weakness. The whispers began. "Marcus is erratic. He's lost his edge. He's disengaged." Julian had begun quietly courting board members, building a coalition to oust him, citing a rarely used executive incapacity clause. The irony was, Julian was right. Marcus was disengaged. He was drowning in a world of filtered air, filtered water, and filtered human interaction. Every person he spoke to wanted something: his money, his power, his time, his name. He no longer knew what was real, so he devised a plan. A desperate, theatrical, and slightly mad plan. He called in Arthur, his head of security. Arthur was a former SAS operative, a man of profound loyalty and zero imagination, which made him the perfect accomplice. "I'm disappearing, Arthur," Marcus had declared 3 weeks ago. Arthur had simply nodded. "Kidnapping, sir? Ransom?" "Worse," Marcus had replied. "I'm becoming homeless, right here in Ethelberg. 30 days. No contact, unless it's a code black. I want to see what this city, my city, is really made of. I want to see what I'm made of without the suit and the black card." Arthur had protested, of course. "Sir, the risks, your safety, the board." "The board is Julian's problem," Marcus had snapped. "He thinks I'm unstable? Fine. Let him run things for a month while I'm gone. See how he does. This is a test, Arthur. For him and for me." And so, with Arthur's reluctant help, the transformation had been wrought. A crack house dentist had provided a convincing and painful prosthetic decay for his perfect teeth. A theatrical makeup artist had created the beard and the grime. A safe house, a filthy single-room occupancy hovel, had been rented under a false name, where he could safely sleep. His only lifeline was a burner phone, programmed with one number, Arthur's. For 3 weeks he had been Patch. And it had been horrifying. It wasn't the cold or the hunger. He'd buffered those, cheating with thermal underwear beneath his rags and high-protein bars stashed in his hovel. It was the invisibility. People didn't just ignore him. They looked through him. They recoiled if he came too close. They spoke about him as if he weren't there. Can you believe the smell? Someone should clean this human garbage off the streets. He was no longer Marcus Thorne. He was an object, a piece of urban blight. The cruelty was staggering, and his encounter with Harrison proved his experiment was doubly dangerous. Julian wasn't just waiting for him to fail. He was actively hunting him, trying to prove his instability. Being found in this state by Julian's men, that could be the end. He would be photographed, declared incompetent, and institutionalized before he could even get to a shower. And then, into this bleak, cynical experiment, walked Liliana Jensen. The next day, Marcus was back in his alley, his nerves frayed. He'd spent the night in his hovel, the thin mattress smelling of dust and sorrow, staring at the cracked ceiling. Lily's bravery had unsettled him. He was a man who dealt in leverage, in threats, in complex systems. He did not know how to deal with simple, unadorned goodness. He almost didn't go back to the park. It was compromised. Harrison knew this spot. But the thought of the girl, Lily, coming to find him, and thinking he had been scared off by the bully, it was inexplicably unacceptable. So he returned, huddling by the dumpster, pulling his blanket tight. He was jumpy, scanning every face in the crowd, seeing Julian's spies in every passing suit. 4 o'clock came, then 4:15. He felt a sharp, stupid pang of disappointment. Of course she wouldn't come back. She'd seen him for the fraud he was. "Mr. Patch?" The voice was hesitant. He looked up. She was there, standing a few feet away, her unicorn lunchbox held in front of her like a shield. "You came back," he said, his voice rough. "So did you," she replied, as if this were obvious. She approached and sat on the pavement, a careful distance away. She opened her lunchbox. The smell of peanut butter and apples wafted into the alley. "My mom packed extra again," she announced, though her tone suggested this was a polite fiction. She held out half a sandwich, this one on wheat bread, and a small sealed cup of applesauce. "You should eat." He looked at the food. His stomach, accustomed to protein bars and the occasional slice of stolen pizza, gurgled. But it was more than hunger. It was a transaction, but not his kind. This wasn't a deal. It was a gift. He took it. "Thank you, Lily." "You're welcome." She began to eat her own half. her small feet in their scuffed pink shoes, swinging back and forth. They sat in silence for a minute. "Why do they call you Patch?" she asked, her mouth full. He'd rehearsed this. I used to fix things. Now I just have patches. On my coat." He pointed to a large sewn-on square of canvas on his elbow. "Oh." She nodded, accepting this. "I like to fix things too. I fixed my mom's music box. The dancer was broken. I use super glue. It's a little bit sticky, but it works." "That's good," Marcus said, taking a bite. The peanut butter was sweet, clinging to his fake teeth. It was the best thing he'd tasted in 3 weeks. "Why were you hiding in the alley?" "It's quieter," he lied. "Sometimes the park is too loud." "I like the loud," she said. "It means people are here. My mom and I. Our apartment is too quiet now. Since my daddy went to heaven." Marcus froze, the sandwich halfway to his mouth. This was not territory he wanted to be in. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," she said, her voice matter of fact, the way children are about horrors they've had to normalize. "It was a long time ago, like 53 weeks. He had a sickness in his chest. The doctors tried, but my mom said the bills got too big for the medicine to work." A 7-year-old talking about medical debt. A cold fury, purer and sharper than any boardroom anger, lanced through Marcus. He who had just spent $50,000 on a whim to re-landscape his penthouse terrace. That's very hard," he managed. "We're okay," she said, brightening. "My mom is a superhero. She works 2 jobs. She works at the diner in the morning. She gets free pancakes sometimes. And she works at her pewter at night. She's a graphic designer. She draws pictures for websites." "She's an artist," Marcus said, understanding. "Yes, she's the best. She can draw anything." Lily began to rummage in her school backpack, a flimsy thing with a broken zipper. She pulled out a dog-eared notebook and a pencil case. "See? I'm an artist, too." She opened the book. It was filled with drawings. They were, to his untrained eye, chaotic and brilliant. There were pages and pages of lions. Lions with huge wild manes, lions with wings, lions sleeping, lions roaring. "You like lions," he observed. "They're my favorite. They're the bravest. They protect their family. This one," she pointed to a particularly fierce drawing, "is guardian. He protects me and my mom." "He looks very brave," Marcus said, his voice thick. "He is." She tore the page carefully from the notebook. "This is for you, to protect you from the bully." She handed him the drawing. He took it, his gloved fingers trembling slightly. The paper was thin, creased. The lion was drawn in orange and yellow crayon, its mane a ferocious scribble. "Lily," he said, I can't." "Don't be silly," she said, closing her notebook. "It's just a drawing. I have lots." She stood up and brushed crumbs from her coat. "I have to go. It's 4:28. She shouldered her backpack. "See you tomorrow, Patch?" "Yes, Lily. See you tomorrow." She ran off, leaving him alone in the alley with half a sandwich and a crayon drawing of a lion. He stared at the drawing for a long, long time. He then folded it with meticulous care and tucked it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, which he wore under the filthy trench coat. It was the only clean place he had left. That night, he broke his own rule. He went to his hovel, a tiny, windowless room above a defunct butcher shop, and pulled the burner phone from a loose floorboard. He dialed Arthur's number. It was answered on the first ring. "Sir, is it a code black?" Arthur's voice was tense. "No, Arthur, it's information. I need you to find someone. A woman named Sarah Jensen. Her daughter is Liliana, 7 years old. They live somewhere near the Westville Park. The husband, David, died about a year ago. Medical debt. She's an artist, a graphic designer, works at a diner. Understood, sir. Purpose of inquiry? Just find her. I want to know where she lives. I want to know who holds the debt. I want to know everything. Sir, Mr. Vance has called an emergency board meeting for Friday. This was fast. Today was Tuesday. He's citing the incapacity clause, sir, your disappearance. He's painting a picture of a breakdown. Let him, Marcus said, feeling a strange calm. Let him have his meeting. I'll be there. But first, Arthur, get me that information. And be discreet. No ripples. Understood, sir. The line went dead. Marcus sat on the lumpy cot. He pulled the drawing of the lion from his pocket. Guardian. He was about to break his other rule. He wasn't just observing. He was about to intervene. The game had changed. Sarah Jensen brushed a strand of blonde hair from her eyes, her hands smudged with graphite. It was 2 a.m. Her small two-room apartment was cold. The old radiator in the corner clanged and hissed, but produced a pathetic, lukewarm breath. Lily was asleep in the other room, a converted dining nook, her breathing a soft, rhythmic comfort. On Sarah's glowing monitor was a logo design for a new artisanal dog biscuit company. The client was paying her $50. It was 3 days of work. Make it pop, the email had read. But also, like rustic and minimalist. Sarah wanted to weep. She was a painter. Her old canvases, large, abstract, full of color and rage and life, were rolled up under her bed, gathering dust. She had once, a lifetime ago, been the promising new graduate, the one with gallery representation, the one who was going places. Then she had met David. David, with his kind eyes and his easy laugh and his dream of starting a nonprofit. Then David got sick. Not a poetic, gentle sickness, but a brutal, ugly, expensive one, a rare form of leukemia. They had fought. They had sold their car. They had drained their savings. They had cashed in his life insurance early, a viatical settlement, the man had called it, his eyes full of oily pity. And still, the bills. Bills that arrived like clockwork, even after he was gone. Bills that had a cruel, abstract interest rate. Now her life was this: a freezing apartment, a $50 logo, and the constant, thrumming terror of the first of the month. Her main job, the one that paid for the groceries, was at the Golden Goose Diner, a 24-hour joint where she slung hash browns and endless coffee refills for truckers and hungover college kids. Her boss, a sweaty man named Sal, liked to brush against her by the coffee machine. She was 2 weeks late on rent. Mr. Gride, the landlord, had been unsubtle. He was a large, wheezing man who wore cheap suits and too much gold. Sarah, 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 he'd said to her in the hallway just yesterday, blocking her path. You're a pretty girl. We could come to an arrangement. I'm a reasonable man. Her skin had crawled. She had pushed past him, her keys clenched in her fist like a weapon, and locked her door, her heart hammering. The eviction notice was now tucked under a magnet on her fridge, a stark, white reminder. She had 10 days. 10 days to find. What? A miracle? She looked at the dog biscuit logo and felt a tear of pure, hot exhaustion roll down her cheek. She wiped it away, angry. Be a lion, she whispered to herself, a little mantra she'd stolen from Lily. Be the lion. She took a deep breath, cracked her knuckles, and went back to making the logo. Pop. For the next 2 days, Marcus lived a double life. By day, he was Patch, the silent, grateful recipient of star-shaped sandwiches and unfiltered, 7-year-old wisdom. Lily talked. She talked about a bully at school named Kevin who pulled her hair. She talked about how she wanted a puppy, but Mr. Gride didn't allow pets. She talked about a red dress in a shop window that she wanted, but not really, because she knew her mom was saving. Marcus listened. He learned to just listen, without offering solutions, without strategizing. He just absorbed her reality. And every day she brought him a drawing, a tiger, a griffin, another lion, this one sleeping 'cause he's tired. By night, he was Marcus Thorne, crouched in his hovel, the blue light of the burner phone illuminating his face. Arthur's reports were concise and devastating. Sarah Jensen was $280,000 in debt to a third-party collection agency, Apex Resolutions, which had bought her medical debt for pennies on the dollar. They were charging her a 29% interest rate. The landlord, Martin Gride, was worse. He owned half the low-income buildings in this district and was notorious for constructive evictions, letting the buildings fall apart, harassing tenants, and using illegal lockouts to clear them out so he could flip the properties to developers. He was, Arthur noted, currently under investigation by the state attorney general, but the case was stalled. And Mr. Gride, Arthur added, his voice clipped, is a silent partner in 3 shell companies that have all recently received substantial loans from a private equity firm. Which firm? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Vance Capital, Arthur replied. Julian Vance's private investment fund. Marcus felt the pieces click into place with a cold, sickening precision. Julian wasn't just ousting him, he was buying up the city's underbelly. This was a land grab. Harass the poor, evict them, buy the property cheap, and wait for the redevelopment that Thorne Dynamics itself was pioneering in the district. Julian was using Marcus's own company strategy against the city's most vulnerable. He wasn't just a corporate shark. He was a predator, and he was using a slumlord like Gride as his jackal. Sir, Arthur's voice cut through his cold rage, the eviction is set for this Friday at 10 a.m. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. Friday, 2 days from now. The day Julian intended to seize his company was the same day he intended to make Lily and her mother homeless. Ethelberg Division is a dead asset, Julian had said. He was liquidating people. Sir, your orders? Arthur asked. The board meeting, sir. What is the plan? Your suit, your shave. We must time the extraction. No extraction, Arthur, Marcus said softly. Change of plan. I'm not coming in. Not yet. Sir, I don't understand. If you're not at the meeting, Vance will win. He has the votes, sir. They'll declare you incapacitated. Yes, Marcus said. Yes, they will. Let him have his victory. Sir, Arthur's voice was for the first time bordering on panic. This is your company. It's a building, Arthur, just a pile of steel and glass. He was looking at the crayon lion, which he'd taped to the wall of his hovel. I need you to do 2 things for me. First, I need you to find every piece of dirt you can on Apex Resolutions. Their board, their funding, any legal complaints. Second, I need you to be at 1412 Hemlock Avenue on Friday morning, 10 a.m. Bring a notary and a very, very large check. A check, sir? To whom? Gride. No, wait, Marcus thought. Paying Gride off was too easy. It was a reward. No, not Gride. Find the bank that holds the mortgage on that building. I'm buying it. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. Buy. The building, sir? 1412 Hemlock. All of it. The whole property. I don't care what it cost. Liquidate the Hong Kong assets. Use my personal funds. I want to own that building by 9 a.m. on Friday. Is that possible? Sir, with that much capital, yes, it's possible. I can have the paperwork drawn up for a new LLC to acquire it. It will be a rush. Good, Marcus said. Be there, but Arthur, stay out of sight. Don't intervene, not unless I give the signal. Sir, what is the signal? You'll know. He hung up. He looked around the filthy room. He was about to make the single stupidest and most important business decision of his life. He was going to let his $40 billion company fall just to see what would happen. He was going to bet everything on a 7-year-old girl. Thursday was a gray, cold day. The wind had a sharp, biting edge. Lily arrived at the alley looking pale. Her usual bounce was gone. She wasn't carrying her lunchbox. "Hi, Patch," she said, her voice small. She sat on the pavement and wrapped her arms around her knees. "No school?" he asked gently. "No, my mom. She's sick. Not go to heaven sick, just sad sick. She's been crying all day. She lost her pewter job." "The dog biscuits?" "They said her logo didn't pop," Lily whispered, her lower lip trembling. "And Mr. Gride came again. He yelled at my mom. He said tomorrow the sheriff is coming to make us leave. He said he's going to throw all my drawings in the dumpster." The word was a gasp. She finally looked at him, her eyes wide with a terror that was heartbreakingly adult. "Patch, what's a dumpster?" He looked at the large metal container he was leaning against. It's just a trash can, Lily. A big trash can." Her face crumpled. The first tear spilled over and tracked through the grime on her cheek. "But my drawings, my lions, he can't throw them away." And then she broke. It wasn't a child's tantrum. It was a low, racking sob of pure, hopeless despair. She buried her face in her knees and cried. Marcus's heart, a long, dormant organ, felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. He fought every instinct in his body. The instinct to say, "I'm a billionaire, I'll fix it." The instinct to say, "I'll buy you 1,000 drawing pads." The instinct to pull her into a hug, which he knew would terrify her, coming from this filthy stranger. So he just sat there, his own suited, powerful, useless body rigid. He sat there, a king in rags, and listened to a child cry because her world was ending. "He can't," she sobbed. "He can't." "No," Marcus said, his voice a low growl. "He can't." She looked up, sniffing, her face a mess of tears and dirt. He can't? No. You can't lose your lions, Lily. A person needs their lions. But whoa, where will we go? My mom says. We have to go to the shelter. She says it's not nice. You won't, he said. The authority was back in his voice, the CEO's voice. He couldn't help it. You won't go to the shelter. How do you know? She whispered, wanting to believe. Because... He fumbled. He was Patch. He was a beggar. He had no power. Because I know this city, and I know that bullies, they never win. Not in the end. They don't. No, they get what's coming to them. You have to be brave, like your lions. You have to stand your ground. Can you do that? Can you be brave for your mom tomorrow? She scrubbed at her eyes with her sleeve. I can try. Good. He reached into his coat and pulled out it was a granola bar, one of his emergency rations. It was squashed. He handed it to her. You didn't have lunch. Eat this. She took it, surprised. But it's yours. I packed too much, he said, using her line. A tiny, watery smile flickered on her face. Okay. She unwrapped it and began to eat, her sobs subsiding. Tomorrow, Lily, he said, when the men come, I want you to go to your room, and I want you to draw. I want you to draw the bravest lion you have ever drawn. Can you do that for me? A new lion. A new lion. The bravest one. For me. To protect us. Okay, she said, her voice a little stronger. Okay, Patch, I will. Good girl. Now go home. Be with your mom. She needs her own guardian right now. Okay. She finished the bar, stood up and gave him that same formal little nod. Thank you for the bar. You're welcome, Lily. She walked away, her back a little straighter. Marcus watched her go. Then he pulled out his phone. Arthur, the board meeting. I've changed my mind. I will be there. Friday, 9 a.m. The 80th floor boardroom of Thorne Dynamics. The room was hushed, the thick pearl gray carpet absorbing all sound. The 20-foot-long table, a single polished slab of obsidian, reflected the stormy skyline of Ethelberg. The board members, 10 men and 2 women, all dressed in somber, expensive suits, looked at the empty chair at the head of the table. Julian Vance, handsome, tanned, and radiating a controlled, sorrowful confidence, stood at the podium. My friends, my colleagues, he began, his voice resonating with false gravity. This is the hardest day of my career. Marcus was more than a boss to me. He was a mentor, a brother, which is why it is with the heaviest of hearts that I must address his recent instability. He proceeded to lay out a devastating case. Marcus's apathy, his missed meetings, his paranoid talk of filters, and finally, his complete, unexplained disappearance for 3.5 weeks. We have tried to reach him. His security detail is uncooperative. We are left with only one tragic conclusion. Marcus Thorne has suffered a severe mental breakdown. He is incapacitated. He let the word hang in the silent, climate-controlled air. The bylaws are clear. For the good of the company, for the stability of our shareholders, we must move forward. I am therefore asking for a unanimous vote to appoint me as acting CEO, pending a full medical evaluation of Marcus. He looked around. He had their votes. He knew it. He'd spent weeks securing them. Are there any questions? The main door of the boardroom swung open. It didn't slam. It opened with a smooth, expensive hiss. A man stood in the doorway. He was not Marcus Thorne, not the one they knew. This man was wearing a tattered, filthy trench coat. His face was covered in a matted, grotesque beard. He smelled, even from the doorway, of the street. He looked like a homeless person. The board members gasped. Security guards posted outside rushed forward. "Sir, you can't be in here." Julian Vance stared, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. What is this?" The man, Patch, walked into the room. The security guards hesitated, unsure whether to touch him. "Gentlemen," the man said, and the board froze, because that voice was not a beggar's. It was the voice of Marcus Thorne. "My apologies for my attire," Marcus said, walking slowly toward the head of the table. "I've been conducting a field audit of our Ethelberg division." He reached the podium. Julian was chalk white. "Marcus, my God, what's happened to you? You're, I'm what, Julian? Unstable, incapacitated?" Marcus smiled, and the effect, with the rotten prosthetic teeth, was grotesque and terrifying. "Or just out of touch. You said I'd lost my edge. You said I didn't know what was happening on the ground, so I went to the ground." He turned to the board. "For 3 weeks I've been living in the district you all so callously labeled a dead asset. The district you," he pointed a gloved, filthy finger at Julian, "are actively trying to hollow out for your own personal gain." "That's a lie," Julian sputtered. "Is it?" Marcus pulled a phone from his pocket. Not the burner, his real phone, which Arthur had delivered to his hovel an hour ago, along with a high-definition projector. He clicked a button. The large screen behind him lit up. Bank statements, offshore accounts, emails between Julian and Martin Gride, emails between Julian and the board of Apex Resolutions. Vance Capital, Marcus said, his voice a low, lethal hum, has been systematically loaning money to slumlords like Martin Gride, who in turn use illegal tactics to evict low-income tenants. Vance Capital then buys the buildings at rock-bottom prices. And who, he clicked again, is the primary investor in Vance Capital? Why, it's our chief competitor, Akagi Cyber. You weren't just ousting me, Julian, you were selling us out, piece by piece, starting with the poorest. The board was silent, their faces ranging from horrified to furious. Marcus, this is insane, Julian stammered, backing away. Insane? No, Julian, this is just business. Your business. Marcus looked at the security guards. Get him out of here, and call the Ethelberg police. I believe they'll be very interested in Mr. Vance's portfolio. The guards, no longer hesitant, seized Julian by the arms. You can't do this to me, Marcus. I made you. You were nothing before I. His voice faded as he was dragged, shouting, from the room. Marcus Thorne stood at the head of the table, a king in rags. He looked at his stunned, silent board. Ladies, gentlemen, well now, Thorne Dynamics is under new management, my management, and we are changing our business model. He clicked his phone again. A new image appeared on the screen. It was a chaotic, brilliant crayon drawing of a lion. This, Marcus said, his voice softening, is our new head of inspiration. We are no longer in the business of dead assets. We are in the business of guardians. We are starting a new initiative, the Liliana Foundation. Our entire Ethelberg division is being restructured. We are no longer developing luxury condos. We are developing communities, affordable housing, arts programs. Our first project is 1412 Hemlock Avenue. He looked at his watch. 9:58 a.m. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have an eviction to attend. 10:02 a.m., 1412 Hemlock Avenue. The hallway was dark, smelling of boiled cabbage and old dust. Sarah Jensen stood in her open doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling. Mr. Gride was there, a smug, triumphant look on his face. He was flanked by two large, bored-looking men in sheriff's department jackets, and a third man in overalls holding a crowbar. Time's up, Sarah, Gride said, checking his gold-plated watch. Like I said, 10 a.m., sharp, out. Please, Mr. Gride, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. Just a few more days, I'll have the money. Oh, I know you don't have the money, Gride sneered. I own your debt, sweetheart. Apex Resolutions? That's me. You're not going to have the money ever. Now get out. My men here need to, clear the unit. One of the uniformed men stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to vacate the premises. From inside the apartment, from the tiny dining nook-turned bedroom, came a small, defiant voice. No, you can't. You can't take our home. Lily, honey, stay in your room, Sarah cried, her panic rising. Get the kid, Gride snapped at the man with the crowbar. The man started to move forward. I really wouldn't do that if I were you. The voice came from the stairwell. It was low, gravelly, and familiar. Patch? Lily's voice, small and hopeful, came from the apartment. Patch. Lily ran from her room and pushed past her mother, running into the hallway. She stopped dead. The man standing at the top of the stairs was not Patch. And yet, he was. The filthy trench coat was gone. The matted beard was gone. The grime was gone. In their place stood a man of breathtaking elegance. He was wearing a dark, impeccably tailored suit, a crisp white shirt, and a simple, dark blue tie. His dark brown hair was neatly parted, his skin clear, his jaw set. He was the man from the boardroom, but his eyes were the same. The piercing, intelligent, sad eyes of the man in the alley. Patch, she whispered, confused. Marcus Thorne looked at Mr. Gride, who was staring, open-mouthed, at this apparition. "Mr. Martin Gride," Marcus said, his voice echoing in the narrow hall. He was flanked now by two men who had come up the stairs behind him. One was Arthur, the other was a nervous man in a suit, clutching a briefcase. "Who the hell are you?" Gride blustered. "My name is Marcus Thorne." The name hung in the air. Gride knew the name. Everyone in Ethelberg knew the name. Thorne Tower dominated the skyline. What's this got to do with, Mr. Gride," Marcus continued, his voice lethally calm. "As of 9:07 a.m. this morning, your mortgage on this building, held by Ethelberg First National, was acquired by a new holding company, Guardian Properties, LLC. As you are in default on 4 separate covenants of that mortgage, including, let's see, failure to maintain a habitable environment, code violations 304A, 502B, and 711C, and, my personal favorite, illegal harassment of tenants. We are calling in the full balance, effective immediately." Gride's face went from a blotchy red to a waxy, sickly white. You can't. I have 30 days. You don't," Marcus said, "because Guardian Properties is also, as of an hour ago, the primary loan holder on your other major creditor, Apex Resolutions, which we've discovered is a fraudulent corporation set up to violate state usury laws. We've just acquired all its assets, including Mrs. Jensen's debt, which is now forgiven." He looked past Gride, at Sarah, who was leaning against the doorframe, her hand over her mouth, looking between Marcus and her daughter. "Mrs. Jensen, my apologies for this man's behavior. I don't understand," Sarah whispered. Who are you?" Lily, who had been watching this all unfold with a preternatural stillness, stepped forward. She looked up at the towering, elegant man. "He's Patch," she said, her voice full of dawning, absolute certainty. "Aren't you?" Marcus looked down at her. He crouched, his expensive trousers creasing. He was now at her eye level. "Yes, Lily," he said, his voice thick. "I'm Patch. I had to fix some things." Your beard," she said, reaching out a finger but not daring to touch his clean-shaven face. "It was a disguise," he said, "to hide from the bullies." "Did you win?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "We won. I'll sue you," Gride shrieked, his voice cracking. I'll Julian Vance will." "Mr. Vance is currently unavailable," Arthur said, stepping forward. "He's assisting the police with their inquiries, as I believe will you be." Arthur nodded to the actual police officers who had just come up the stairs behind him. "Mr. Gride, we have a warrant for your arrest. Racketeering, harassment, fraud." Gride made a small choking sound and seemed to deflate. As the officers led him away, Marcus stood up. He looked at Sarah, who was staring at him with a mixture of terror, confusion, and dawning hope. "Mrs. Jensen, Sarah, my name is Marcus Thorne. I owe your daughter a great deal. She reminded me of something I had lost." The building?" Sarah stammered. You bought the building?" "I did, and I'm afraid you'll have to be inconvenienced. We're starting a full renovation. Immediately. New plumbing, new heating, new windows. A playroom in the basement. Of course," he added quickly, "we'll be housing you and all the other tenants in a suite at the Thorne Regency Hotel at our expense until the work is complete. And your rent when you return will be, well, let's say it will be $1 for the next, 99 years, if that's acceptable." Sarah just stared. She was incapable of speech. "Mom?" Lily said, tugging on her hand. "Mom, the billionaire Patchman is talking to you." Sarah let out a sound that was half a laugh, half a sob. Yes. Yes, that's acceptable. Good, Marcus said, feeling an awkwardness he never felt in the boardroom. Well, then. Wait, Lily said. She ran back into the apartment. Marcus and Sarah stood in the hallway in the sudden, quiet aftermath. Lily ran back out. She was holding a piece of paper. I drew it, she said, holding it up to him. You told me to. The bravest one. To protect us. Marcus took the drawing. It was another lion. This one was magnificent. It wasn't just standing. It was leaping. Its mane was a riot of yellow, orange, and red. Its eyes were fierce and its mouth was open in a triumphant roar. And in the corner, in a child's careful printing, were 2 words. For Patch. Marcus Thorne looked at the drawing, and then at the small, serious girl who had drawn it. He felt the sting of tears, an alien, burning sensation. He, who had just toppled a corporate titan and bought a city block without blinking, was completely undone by a piece of paper and a crayon. Thank you, Liliana, he said, his voice cracking. It's the bravest one I've ever seen. 6 months later, the Westville Park was no longer windswept and barren. It was alive. The grass was green and manicured. The old, broken benches had been replaced with new, gracefully designed ones. A brand-new, brightly colored playground swarmed with children, their laughter mixing with the sound of a newly installed fountain. At the park's edge, the building at 1412 Hemlock Avenue was unrecognizable. Its brick facade had been cleaned. Its windows gleamed. Bright flower boxes sat under every window. It had a new name, painted in elegant, artistic script above the new oak doors. The Liliana. Inside the lobby there was no more peeling paint or boiled cabbage smell. The walls were a warm, bright white, and they were covered in art. Large, vibrant, abstract canvases that pulsed with color and life. Residents and visitors mingled, looking at the art. At a small, discreet plaque, a caption read, The Guardian Series by Sarah Jensen. Sarah, looking 10 years younger, her hair in a stylish cut, her face full of light, was explaining a piece to an interested patron. She was the building's first artist in residence, and her entire collection had sold out before the opening. In the park, on one of the new benches, sat Marcus Thorne. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans, a soft gray cashmere sweater, and a pair of simple sneakers. He looked relaxed. He looked happy. Beside him sat Lily. She, too, had changed. She was wearing a new, bright red dress, the one from the shop window, and her hair was tied back in a ponytail. They were both drawing in identical, leather-bound sketchbooks. No, Lily was instructing him, her tone one of mock exasperation. You're making the mane, too. Neat. It has to be wild. Like this. She scribbled fiercely on her page. A neat mane isn't brave, it's just combed. I stand corrected, Ms. Jensen, Marcus said, smiling. He tried to make his lion's mane wilder. His drawing was objectively terrible. He had no artistic talent whatsoever. That's better, she said, nodding in approval. She looked up from her drawing. My mom says you're our patron, like in the olden days. Are you? I suppose I am, Marcus said. I'm the patron of the Liliana Foundation, and your mother is our very first beneficiary and our lead artist. She's happy, Lily said quietly, watching her mother laugh in the lobby. She doesn't cry at night anymore. Good, Marcus said. She shouldn't. Are you happy, Patch? Lily asked, turning to him. He looked at her, surprised. He considered the question. He'd stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Thorne Dynamics, promoting a whip-smart woman from the R&D division to CEO. He spent his days now running the foundation. He was building. Not skyscrapers, but communities. He was fixing things. He still saw his daughter, Annabelle. It was. Still. Awkward. But last week she had asked him about his work. Not his stock price. His work. It was a start. He looked at the park, full of life. He looked at the building, full of hope. He looked at the small, resilient girl beside him, who was now adding wings to her lion. "Yes, Lily," he said, his voice full of a feeling he now recognized as simple, profound peace. "I am. I'm very happy." "Good." She tore her drawing from the sketchbook. "This one's for you." He took it, another lion. "Guardian," she said, "to protect you." "Thank you," he said. "I'll keep it safe." He opened his own, expensive sketchbook. On the very first page, taped carefully to the thick, cream-colored paper, was a creased, slightly smudged crayon drawing of a leaping lion. "He can be a friend for this one," Marcus said. "The one that started it all." Lily giggled. "They can be a pride." "A pride," Marcus agreed, smiling. He looked up, past the park, at the Ethelberg skyline. The Thorn Tower was there, scraping the clouds, a monument of glass and steel, a testament to his old life. But his eyes were drawn back to the new, clean brick of the Liliana. He was no longer the man in the tower, looking down. He was the man on the bench, looking at. And for the first time in his entire, privileged, powerful life, Marcus Thorne understood the difference between being rich and having value. He had been a billionaire, but it took a 7-year-old girl, her last sandwich, and a crayon lion to finally make him wealthy.